Navika, finally we are seeing the face of New India, and the face is of Dr. Jaishankar. I hope it lasts. It has taken 8 years for the Modi dispensation to stand up to American bullying and to expose their rampant hypocrisy. Remember when President Obama came visiting in 2015 and told us off snootily inside our own parliament about human rights, and President to Prime Minister down, we remained silent? This when, during the Obama years, there were 2.7 lakh violent hate crimes in 2012. That's 30 violent hate crimes against minorities,
Navika.
ethnic or racial, every hour, of every day, of every year. But we remained silent as he waxed eloquent about violence and human rights and Christians under attack, even though that whole narrative of churches under attacks by Hindus turned out to be totally fake. Navika, very briefly, two issues here. Number one, yes, while we mustn't interfere militarily or financially in the internal matters of another country, and we don't, I don't believe in all this diplomatic bunkum that we shouldn't talk about the internal matters of another country. Any world leader should be able to talk on any matter pertaining to another country freely. Don't we want leaders of other countries to expose China and its concentration camps that have interned 1.5 million Uyghur Muslims and are feeding them pork and mass sterilizing them? Even though, surprise, surprise, some of our own people, like the communists, are totally silent on this internal matter of China. To be sure, whether they are our own people is debatable too. But anyway, so yes, talk about any matter, internal or external, but be prepared to take it on the chin when we also talk about your internal matter. In this regard, what Dr. Jaishankar is doing, rebutting America and Europe, is praiseworthy. Number two, very briefly, America reminds me of this couplet. उम्र भर गालिब यही भूल करता रहा, धूल चेहरे पे थी आईना साफ करता रहा. I mean, no one has violated,
लोकेश जिंदल, कांग्रेस को क्यों प्रॉब्लम हो रही है?
नाविका 10 सेकंड्स कहना चाह रहा था मैं आपसे. लोकेश जी, मैं 10 सेकंड चुरा लूं आज, क्योंकि बैसाखी भी है.
लीजिए नहीं, बैसाखी है तो आप क्यों चुरा रहे हैं? क्योंकि आपकी पत्नी पंजाबी है.
नाविका नहीं, आप पंजाबी में ये कहना चाह रहा था कि अब हम वी शुड नॉट हैंकर ओवर सॉफ्ट पावर. सॉफ्ट पावर वो वर्क की तरह है जो काजू कतली पे चढ़ती है. रियल हार्ड पावर काजू कतली है. कोई वर्क का टेस्ट ध्यान में नहीं रखता, सबको काजू कतली का टेस्ट याद होता. No, absolutely, Rahul, and let me tell you this, Delhi Files is going to be as painful to watch as the Kashmir Files was. Because the true story of the Sikh genocide has also been carefully hidden from us for more than 3 decades. And whoever has tried to talk about it, write about it, make a film on it, has suffered terribly. Till now, did you know, every film that has ever been made on 1984 Sikh genocide, Amu, 31st October, Qaum De Hire, Sada Haq, Hawaii, has either been heavily censored by the Congress or banned. The Delhi Files would meet the same fate. The saving grace is that by the time it releases, there'll be no state left under the Congress, and so the film might be spared. But you never know. As Kashmir Files said, government unki hai, lekin system to hamara hai. So it might be banned after all. And it's not that the files don't exist. In fact, there is 100 times more documentary evidence here than there was in the Kashmiri Hindu genocide. More papers, more witness testimonies, more commission of inquiries. But what has been the outcome? On November 1, 1984, Rahul, a mob of 4,000 attacked Gurdwara Rakabganj. 2 Sikhs, father and son, were burnt alive. Mr. Suri, a journalist, witnessed the mob. He told the commission the mob was led by one man. That man, a few years ago, became the 18th Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh, Kamal Nath. Before this, he was the minister multiple times, and so was Jagdish Taitu. Both have never been convicted. It was Rajiv Gandhi who said that infamous diabolical phrase, when a big tree falls, the earth shakes. Well, the earth shook and consumed the bodies of more than 10,000 innocent Sikhs, men, women and children. But the thing with truth is, it has a way of surfacing. Recently in an interview to NDTV, Kamal Nath said, and I quote, Rajiv Gandhi did not send me to the Rakabganj Gurdwara, unquote. A few years later, in an interview to the Print, the same Kamal Nath said, Rajiv Gandhi actually did send me to the Rakabganj Gurdwara. In any civilized society, this itself should have prompted our judiciary to act, to reopen the probe, but nothing, zilch. After all, e incumbet probatio qui desit non qui negat. A man is innocent until proven guilty, isn't it? The same goes for Mr. Jagdish Titler. He is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Although the Nanavati Commission that looked into the anti-Sikh riot declared him guilty. You may not vote for him. You may not like to see him become a minister. But if you believe in the concept of justice, you cannot proclaim him guilty. Rahul, just 30 seconds. Unless the state sets up tens of separate courts and judicial mechanisms to hear cases that pertain only to riots, politicians, vandals, book burners, and public servants. Unless these cases are admitted, heard, and disposed within 6 months to 1 year, we cannot hope for a better future for this country. Because wounds that are 20 or 30 or 40 years old never heal, Rahul, they fester. And like so many before it, Delhi files also would be flapped shut and its laces tied and lobbed on top of a Godrej Almira in a High Court corridor.
Well, let me...
Good evening, Rahul, and good evening to all my fellow panelists. I have 3 points to make, and I'll be very brief. Number one, my good friend Tehseen is there after a long time. Welcome, Tehseen. But unfortunately, you have yet again spread fake news. Modi, what you allege, Rahul, and it would have been better if Amit Malviya had corrected Tehseen, but he hasn't. In any way, Modi never alleged that. What Modi said was कि कल से एक्शन और रिएक्शन की प्रतिक्रिया चल रही है और मैं चाहता हूं कि ना एक्शन चले ना रिएक्शन चले. In fact, he was condemning this fact of action versus reaction. So it's completely the other way what is being portrayed by my good friend Tehseen. Number two, if at all, looking by all the tremendous investigative work that you've done, and I commend you, Rahul, for that and your team, I think two things are very clear. That even in this internet age of 24-hour video surveillance or video evidence or other evidence or witnesses, you will still find people who are going to peddle their agenda. And I take you back to exactly 2 years now. It is eerie. The videos that you're showing, Rahul, is actually, you could be mistaken for saying that they are from the rooftop of Tahir Hussein's house. If you remember the East Delhi riots. It is eerie. It's the same weaponry, petrol bombs. It's the same swords, dandas, stones. Everything is there. And do you remember, like Shivam's brother had to come out and say, what the hell do you mean by provocation? Do you remember what happened during those Delhi riots, Rahul? Let me remind you. Vinod was lynched. And do you know what was said? Why he was lynched? It was justified because his bike sported a Jai Shri Ram sticker. Ankit was stabbed 55 times. His hand was found in a drain. Do you know what rationalization was there? Why was he moving next to Tahir Hussein's house? Why was he going in a Muslim area? So you will always, and this was the same justification, rationalization of, you suffered the Kashmiri Hindu genocide, Rahul. I don't need to say this, I'm not being patronizing. But a fellow journalist said that Kashmiri Hindus, Kashmiri Pandits had monopolized all jobs. It was a mechanism for almost like rationalizing what happened to them. So the essence that I get from all this is that I'm sorry, but Hindu lives don't matter. And Tehseen does have a limited point when he castigates Amit Shah. Of course, I take that, Tehseen, especially in the case of Delhi riots. But what do you have to say about Karoli? When the chief minister of a state under whom falls the law and order is saying Modi is responsible for law and order?